Dreamcast time. Dreamcast time. Dreamcast time.
It's so hot right now. Okay, so now I'm going to do the Dreamcast with the mode from scratch. I actually prepared my SSD, so it's actually got games on it. I still have my, I got my Saturn all working, but I've still got the shell off of it, so I've got some parts, the screws from it, until I can confirm everything's working before I close that up again. Hi cat, how's it going? The Dreamcast looks really straightforward. I don't have to take a metal chassis apart or anything, which is good. Cat here. Okay. Oh, kitty.
Yo yo. Hey buddy.
No, cat, you cannot. I don't think you can help with this. It was easier this afternoon when the cats were all sleeping. Okay, so this looks pretty straightforward. It's like three pages of instructions rather than the however many there was for the Saturn, 7 or 8. That's the broadband adapter slot, I think. Interesting that this part here, I don't even know if it's got a port. I don't know what this is though, but it does actually have an Industry Canada sticker on it, so it's got to have some components in it. Cat, you can't do that. I think I'm probably expecting the Dreamcast to probably take, I bet you I can have this installed in 15 to 20 minutes. Looking at the instructions, unless something goes horribly wrong and I have to redo something. Otherwise it should be pretty simple. Okay. I have had this open before in the past. I think I was messing around at some point with the yeah, I was having trouble where it was always thinking that the lid was open, because there's a little plastic sensor right here that when that gets pushed by the swinging of the door hinge closing, it pushes this, and that if it's not tripped, the failsafe comes on, it knocks you back to the main menu. So I actually had to put some see if I actually had to put some sort of padding on the end of this. You can see where it, and I think it's just label material. I put about 3 or 4 plies of it, and surprisingly it's actually holding on there okay. I may build that up with something else at some point. I might actually get something that will build up an actual plastic. I don't know if acrylic would do it. Acrylic might be too soft. And there's a ton of stuff I could do to this Dreamcast over time here. I could put a new fan. Some people like to throw a larger, was it Noctua fan in here. Caps all look really good on the power supply. Been really good, this one actually. It's other than the problem with this sensor not being tripped, and so once in a while it would knock me in the middle of a game out to the main menu, and that's a big problem. But I mean, whatever. I was able to fix it fairly easily. So I do actually have to take the PSU out. I'm not sure why. You know what? I'm not sure I need to actually take this power supply out. I'm going to... Now here's one thing where I'm looking at instructions on this monitor here that they need to be clearer about. It just says on certain revisions you may need to remove your power supply to get to the GD-ROM screws. It'd be nice if they were able to give you more information on what those are, in terms of on the back here, what, you know, is there any markings you need to look for? Oh, I think I see what they're saying. Looks like so this, lot like the Saturn, has a sort of like a mylar or plastic shielding here that's just sort of laid in under the power supply, which keeps it from touching, from having any chance of touching any metal components. So I don't know if iFixit has a Dreamcast guide. I have no idea. I don't know if it would do me much good here, just because the just because it's such a specialized installation of something. I don't know. Yeah, I guess if you were looking at replacing the CD, the optical drive, that would work the same. That'd be interesting to find out. But I'm thinking that this plastic shield might be slightly in the way when I try to take the drive, because this unit here, I believe it's this black plastic part, but it's also this assembly underneath of it. I think this entire thing is going to come out, and it may impact this shield. But that's the only thing I can see, is just this plastic shielding, and I think I can get out around it. I'm willing to bet. Let's give it a shot anyways. So before I take out this power supply, because I don't want to, if I don't have to mess with the power supply, I'd rather not. Although this is actually this is a better design than the Saturn, because there's no the power supply here, rather than being anchored by screws into the plastic housing like the Saturn had, and you saw both of my mounts had stress fractures. This power supply is just held on. It's got the connector mounted, and with also a bracket here that holds it tighter, so it doesn't need that extra thing. And then there's just a screw here and a screw. There are 2 screws, I believe. I don't know where the other one is, and then a clip over on this side. And that's it. Oh yeah, so screw here. You've got your connector to the main board. Sorry, this is your connector to the power button to make the power button do activate this. And then, if I do need to take this power supply out, it's less of a invasive thing than it was on the Dreamcast or the Saturn. But let me see if I can just take this GD ROM off without messing around too much with the power supply. Because if I can help it, I'd rather not mess with the power supply. I can access the screws, and that's a good sign, because I think that's I think on some revisions that's the actual issue, is that one of the screws for this GD unit is underneath where the power supply board is. Where's the fourth screw here? Okay, there are only 3 screws on the GD assembly. And again, one thing they don't tell you, but there's a plastic post here. It doesn't look like it's actually cinching anything though. Let's see. Yeah, you see it's the plastic. This little plastic piece is moving, kind of in the way. But if I can get out around that, it should be okay. And that's that. So that's the whole nicely self-contained unit. I'm going to keep this aside. Same as on the Saturn, I'm going to keep this in case I decide to put this back to stock at some point, because you never know. Oh yeah, the only thing I could feel was they have a really good way of doing the connector. Connectors are hard mounted on the board, and then connects to the bottom of that, which is pretty smart. I like that. I will not throw it in the trash. Okay, so I need these 3 screws and this unit, and I'm going to put these aside. Just because you never know. At some point I may decide to sell this thing, and it's just easier to sell it stock rather than deal with, you know, do I take the SSD off, you know, to make it kosher in terms of you know, copyright law and all that kind of thing. Okay, next step here should be pretty simple. At this point I can take the board. Oh yeah, this is pretty much it. Didn't even have to mess with the power supply. And basically all I need to do is, now once again, they've made the same mistake again that I had on the Saturn side of things. I'm gonna have to send these guys an email. Their installation instruction, at least in my eyes, indicates that you need to put the standoffs for the to mount this board onto the metal chassis, that you would actually put them on in holes that would interfere with an SSD drive, which is what I'm using. It indicates on their thing to use this here and this here for the standoffs, when that will actually interfere with the fine line you see here is where an SSD will sit. So that would be trouble. You need to actually use these far ones. So they need to, for whatever reason, somebody circled these 2 in green on the 0.8 version of the manual, and that's incorrect, because these are meant to be kept clear, and you're meant to use these 2 for the standoffs. Just pop in there. It's interesting, they had to, some interesting engineering here where they had to, I mean, it's a pretty minor thing, but they have to make sure that the standoffs they use are properly sized, because this connector here is just going to pop right down onto where the GD units one goes to make sure that all sits properly. That's, you gotta be pretty good on your measurements and manufacturing. One change I did to my Saturn board from what I did earlier today is I decided in the end not to use the drive screws to affix it to the PCB, because I realized as I was having to take this thing, the Saturn one, because I had a little bit of troubles with it and I had to take some things, take it and take the SSD off. Suddenly I couldn't just take it off because it's affixed from the bottom of the PCB board. I had to keep undoing the standoffs and pulling it off that way. I just didn't like doing that. So my system, I think, will be stable enough where it sits that the SSD
How many
is fine.
gigabytes is the SSD that you are using with this system?
The one I bought 480 gig SSDs for both of them. That won't work for everyone for a few reasons. Number one, depending on what ROMs you have, how many, and whether they are what format they're in, you may go way over that 480 gigs. For me, I use bin and queue for everything, and even though I have a pretty substantial Saturn collection, the ROMs that I have, I didn't need nearly that much space. I'm using, I think, on Saturn about 290 gigs, and on Dreamcast, I think around 350 or almost 400, but I still have tons of room to spare. Some people also, because this board works in both a Dreamcast and a Saturn, some people are going the route of buying a single board and pulling them out and moving them between systems. Something I just didn't want to deal with. But in that case, if you were going to do that, you're trying to save some money, you want to buy just one board, because these things are 180 euros a piece. Then I would take a single, say 2 terabyte, 1 terabyte to 2 terabyte drive on here, because as long as you have your Saturn ROMs and your Dreamcast ROMs in their own specifically named folder, Saturn and Dreamcast, it'll recognize between the two of them, and it auto mode switches depending on what system it's in. It auto detects and auto switches. But I don't want to deal with any of that. I don't like opening systems. I don't want to have to deal with these standoffs every time. So yeah, I decided just get 480 gig ones. They were the most cost effective for me. They were cheaper than an SD card of the same size, and I had even more space on it. I think it was about the same price as a 320 gig SD card, and thermals won't be too bad, because it's a, these things essentially, like, if this feels hollow basically, it's probably got the equivalent of an SD card sitting inside this entire housing, and then the housing itself can actually work as a bit of a heat sink. So I think that's the way to go. I think these SSDs, I kind of scoffed at it because I use SSD cards normally on my Raspberry Pi and stuff like that, but when it came to this, it was more cost effective to just get an actual SSD drive. It does cost less money, and I got more space, so I've got some future growth room there if need be. I keep buying games for the Dreamcast. I just got Xenocrisis in the mail this last week from Bitmap Brothers, so there are games still coming out. I've got a lot of those shoot 'em ups on there, like Ducks and Sturmwind and stuff like that. So I like to have a little bit of space to put some more new sort of independent developer games on there. So what I'll do is I'll throw the SSD on after I've got it on there, just in case I need to mess around with it. And I should be able to just go ahead and see if I can. I probably should have done a test fit with this, just to know exactly where I need to place it, but that's not really how I do things. So I need to line up this connector here with this connector here. but I've got lots of extra standoffs if need be, and the razor scraper in case I need to lift things out and reposition, and even chuck a standoff and redo it. It's all totally doable. This ribbon cable's kind of in the way, but it's not a big deal. Okay, I got it lined up as far as I can tell. Oh wow. I may have to go inside with the standoffs here because it impacts the case. See, and in that case, that's going to impact where I have my SSD. I may end up clipping the ends of these standoffs. It's supposed to be a drop-in product, and it's very, 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 very close to a purely drop-in product. But it's still got some, it's still got a little bit of that fiddly homebrew feel. I just don't know if I can get it on the... Can I get this thing in here and onto the connector properly with the standoffs the way they are, without putting too much pressure on the board? I have to put a little bit of lateral pressure on it here. No, I don't like that. Okay, this is easy fix though. This is what I'm gonna do. Your mileage may vary, but this is what I'm going to do to get around this. I may need to run to the garage and get a tougher pair of snips, but I'm gonna actually chop off the last, say, 1/4 of an inch, or about, probably about 5 millimeters, 7 millimeters worth of the standoff material. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go get a proper pair of snips. I'll be right back, and then I'll get that all done. If you see a cat come through here, they're not supposed to be there. So I've got a pair of proper snips. These things will go through just about anything. You could cut bone if you needed to. Again, a thing that would be a lot easier to do before these pads come off. The other thing I can do is, it's easy enough to take the standoffs off. There's essentially, you probably can't see it very well, there's essentially one fin that sticks out that actually hooks, and then the other two you simply, once you get the one fin that sticks out kind of pushed in, then it'll actually ease out pretty much on its own with just a little bit of pressure and a little bit of squeeze. It's just easier to do this by hand here. This is definitely something I think they should address in their installation instructions. I don't know if I don't think that I am an odd man out in this one. This should be any Dreamcast that's set up like mine should have the same issue with it, so it's definitely a consideration. If you don't have the SSD like I do, if you are doing an SD card, which goes in here, or you're doing USB out the side, actually USB comes from this side, you could then switch and use this standoff over here, which would normally be in the way of your SSD. If you're using SD card, you could use these the two standoffs that are further in. Then you'd run into no problems. But for me, it's an issue. Hello, cat. Here. Okay. Now with that done, I should be able to drop this on a lot easier. You know what? It even makes for a sloppy installation. I need to actually carve a little bit off of this side. Because it was impacting this housing here. They should definitely mention on there if you want a clean installation, which a lot of us people doing this kind of stuff, you know, we give a crap about whether or not the thing's skewed sideways or almost, you know, it was almost touching the it was touching the plastic shroud on this side. There, much better. And earthquake proof. It's on this versus the Saturn. It has actually a lot more metal chassis to attach to. Yeah, that's way better.
Nice.
Way better. And your SSD just plonks right on there. And I think that's pretty much it. Since I didn't have to mess with the power supply and take that out, you really just have the one step of taking, you know, one step to take the cover off, one step to take the GD unit out, and then drop this on with your SSD or your SD card or USB.
Time to assemble and then take it apart later.
Yeah, well, that's definitely how it was with the Saturn. I've taken the Saturn apart 3 times today. Let's see. Is this going together very well? There we go. Yeah, so in total, I think I moved a total of 7 screws. Only 4 go back in because 3 were with the GD unit. Super simple.
Your case doesn't look very discolored. That's nice.
Yeah, it's actually in pretty good shape. And this is what I bought this unit when I first moved to this city in 2001. So this thing's been in my possession, and it was used before that. So I bought it from a used shop for $100, I believe, in 2001. And then it's been in my possession ever since, and so it's been taken pretty good care of. Usually within, you know, fairly good, but you know, I keep this stuff in the lower level, which is a little more of a humid place, but it stays cool. It's not in sun. It's always pretty well pampered. It's a shame about the that problem I was talking about with the lid always reading as being open, because that I've had that kick me out of games in the middle, but that was a really easy fix. You know, that one there, all I had to do was remove the top, put some material on the hinge to trip that sensor a little more easily, and then that basically fixed it. And I'm hoping that will continue and I don't have to do any more surgery to it. Although I would like to open it up, take that labeled material off, just in case that's something that might start disintegrating over time. And then, yeah, so that's what you get. You have good access. Nice thing about this versus the Saturn, you can't really see there are LEDs here next to these two switches. You see these two switches by my finger there. So there's a set of LEDs towards the front of the unit. That's this sort of white right there. And then the two switches here you actually can use to return to menu and do things like that. So you get really good access to them here. And boy, I wonder if I had to do something with the SSD, you know, move some more files to it, or if I have to monkey with the covers, I wonder if I'd be able to pop that thing and try and finagle it out of here versus taking the top off. I mean, it's just as easy to take top off. But that's it. This guy goes back on.
That's super cool. It looks so weird without a disk drive in it.
Yeah. I'm expecting, you know, the mode. I'm actually I was pretty early on in the pre-order process. Once I read about the thing, I just jumped and bought them. So I got this thing, I think, somewhere in the pretty early shipments. So I'm hoping that as time goes on, people will be doing more, do some shrouds that you can put in here, like you can, you know, some of those other drive replacements that you can get. You can get a nice 3D printed thing here. It'd be nice to get a 3D printed one that you can then manipulate the buttons that are here.
Ryan has a 3D printer.
Yeah. I just don't think there's anything on like the Thingiverse or anything like that just yet to do it. So I usually wait until somebody designs the thing, and then you can just buy it off of Thingiverse and get somebody to print it, and which is always a nice way to go. So that should be it. That's too easy. That was way easier than the Saturn, but everything is, right? I don't have a way. Unfortunately, I don't have a way to stream testing this thing because I don't have a capture setup or anything for old machines downstairs. That's just my go down and use it thing. So I will let you know how it goes.
Have fun testing.
Thank you. And plus I'm looking forward to going downstairs where it's cooler and testing this thing. The Saturn was working really good earlier, so I did monkey with it. I opened it up again and put some more stuff on it, so I get to close that thing up soon because I still have got the shell sitting up here. But now I get to go relax and play some of these. I also got the Retro Brawlers DC Striker controller for the Dreamcast, which is very nice. It's set up more like a modern controller, like an Xbox controller. The cord comes out of the correct place instead of by your hands and around. It's very nice. And I'm hoping at some point Retrobit will put out, they've been talking about putting out a wireless controller for this. So that's what I'm really looking forward to, because I have
cool beans.
I do have a wireless controller ordered for the Sega Saturn, but it's not shipping for another, I think probably for another 2 or 3 months. And then because I'd like to be able to play these with wireless controllers versus my cable extensions and that I've got now. Okay, that's it. I'm just rambling. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna do this thing. Have a nice night.